Pretty big. Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this special Draft Prospects 101 breakdown of a guy that's going to enter into the supplemental draft this year. And every year there's a supplemental draft, but not every year someone is selected. In fact, it's rare that guys are selected in the supplemental draft, especially ones without character flaws and red flags, which is what we have this particular year with cornerback out of Western Michigan, Sam Beal. Let's talk about this guy's pros and why people are gushing over this potential draft pick in the supplemental draft and why this guy can help a team right away in 2018. So you look at Sam Beal, and let's talk about this guy quickly before we jump into his measurables and his play on the field and what makes this guy a candidate to be selected in this year's supplemental draft. Now, this is a guy here, 6'1", buck 90, but he went to Western Michigan, and so not on the radar in the national spotlight, but it's funny, I ran into Sam Beal watching a guy that got drafted this year in Darius Phillips, who was across from him at Western Michigan. And so I was wondering to myself, why is everyone throwing at Darius Phillips so much if this guy's getting drafted by, I think it was the Cincinnati Bengals, if I'm not mistaken, later on in the draft. But we understand that Darius Phillips brings a little bit of that special teams flair to the game as well. So that added value to what he brought to the table. But I'm like, if this guy's getting drafted as a corner, why is everybody targeting this guy so much? And I got my answer in Sam Beal being on the opposite side and what that guy was doing for that Western Michigan football team. So ran into him indirectly watching film on Darius Phillips. That being said, here's a guy that is entering the supplemental draft not because of some character issues, not because he got kicked off the team and isn't going to be able to play his senior season and wants to enter into the draft. Not any of those reasons that we generally get when a guy enters the supplemental draft, but rather he wanted to stay and finish school. He promised his mom he would do so. No one in his family has ever graduated from college, so it's something that he felt like he needed to do. Kind of fell behind in his studies a bit. Grades weren't where they needed to be, was going to have to be academically cleared by the NCAA. So in other words, he could have went through all of training camp in college and got right up to the start of the season, and the NCAA could have come in, and we've seen the NCAA do some shady things in the past and say, hey, you know what, Sam, about you playing this year, no, you're academically ineligible. And that would have really dropped this man's stock. So instead of going through that whole process, he went back, did what he needed to do from a school's perspective, and got himself in a position to graduate. And now he's able to do something that it could be a little bit of a risk for him, because maybe if he goes back, has a stellar senior season, he could have been a top 10 draft pick. But in any event, this guy is legit. He's ready to go. He's ready to rock and roll. And I think someone's going to spend a second round pick in the supplemental draft, which means you're going to lose your second round pick in the following year's draft, meaning you're going to lose a second round selection in the 2019 NFL draft. Teams think that highly of Sam Beal right now that they're willing to give up a second round selection potentially. He's definitely going in the third, if not the second. I believe someone's going to pull the trigger in the second. A lot of teams could use a cornerback with his skill set and length at the next level. Let's talk about Sam Beal, what he brings to the table, and why this guy could potentially be a second round pick in this year's supplemental draft. So I talked about his length already and his size at 6'1", buck 90. That is tremendous size at 6'1". That's the size that you're looking for in today's NFL. These receivers are getting bigger, they're getting stronger, they're getting faster. You need longer corners to combat that, and that's what Sam Beal brings to the table. The buck 90, that's something we'll talk about a little bit later on. But look, I've heard a number of different general managers and front office execs say, look, it's nothing for this guy to come into the league and put on an extra 7 to 10 pounds and not lose any of his athleticism and be just fine. And so I fully expect that. We see guys all the time come in and get bigger as they get into the league, get into that nutrition program, get into the weight training and conditioning program. And all of a sudden guys bulk up, put on an extra 10, 7, 5 pounds, whatever the case may be, and they don't lose a step. So a lot of people expect Sam Beal to be able to do the same thing. But let's talk about his pros though. You start with his measurables. I already talked about 6'1", long arms. You look at him and he looks the part of a long, active corner, a guy that you want in press situations, a guy that you want running down the field stride for stride with a receiver, because with that length, even if he's behind a step, he's not out of the play because he's so long. So you like the measurables that Sam Beal brings to the table at 6'1" with a very long wingspan. Look at his speed. Here's a guy that ran and had a little bit of a workout, for all 32 teams, put on display, sort of like a pro day, a personal pro day, if you will. And this guy went out and ran a 4.4 flat. That was with the wind. Against the wind, he ran a 4.51. So he's somewhere in that neighborhood. Let's call it a 4.46, 4.45. I'm fine with that at 6'1". I'll take that every single day of the week. So the guy can run, and you see it on tape. I didn't see anyone beat Sam Beal deep. Not in any game that I watched. So this is a guy that makes sure he keeps the action in front of him, does a great job of staying in the hip pocket of receivers. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but his speed is something that I don't question, have no reason to do so. Athleticism, this guy's a really gifted athlete. You're talking about a guy with a 10.6 broad and a 37-inch vert to go along with that 4.4 speed. So you're talking about a guy that is a supremely gifted athlete. The acceleration goes along with that speed. As I mentioned, really good change of direction and agility. Love his movement skills. His movement skills are so fluid. He's a smooth, easy mover on the football field. Doesn't waste a lot of motion. So again, it allows him to be over aggressive at the line of scrimmage because of those very fluid skills where he's able to turn his hips and move and stay in phase with the wide receiver. So he does a tremendous job of being able to come up and be aggressive at the line of scrimmage and be a guy that can press you. And even if he doesn't press, gives you a free release, but he's in your grill and you get off the line of scrimmage clean, he's a guy that can turn his hips quickly and get right into the hip of the receiver. Anticipation and awareness. I was really impressed with what I saw from him from a coverage standpoint. And I'll give you an example. Watched him in a number of games. I watched him against Northern Illinois. I watched him against Central Michigan. I watched him against Eastern Michigan. I watched him against USC. So I watched him in a number of games to see what I was really getting out of Sam Beal. And against Eastern Michigan, which I think was probably one of his better games. I thought he was outstanding against USC as well, but I think Eastern Michigan might have been his best game of the season from an all-purpose standpoint. Tackling, physicality, awareness, everything. Had an interception, one of his 2 on the season. I thought he was outstanding in that Eastern Michigan game. So if you really want to see Sam Beal in all of his splendor, that's probably going to be your best bet, is him against Eastern Michigan. But I thought he was outstanding against USC as well. And that's high caliber talent. And he picked off Sam Darnold. So don't underestimate his ability to make big time quarterbacks pay as well. But in any event, you go to that Eastern Michigan game, and here's a play that stood out to me. They're in man-to-man coverage. And his guy, and it's a nice little combination route that the receivers are running on that side. They've got a twin setup on that side of the football field. So the inside receiver is running a wheel route. And on the outside, which Sam Beal is responsible for, that man is running a shallow cross, just a simple crossing route across the field. But what that guy is looking to do is cause confusion and run a natural pick with that wheel route up the sideline, allowing that receiver to get on top of that corner, who's then going to have to get through the traffic of Sam Beal trying to cut across. And I don't think these two corners communicated at all. And what ended up happening was that receiver cut across. Sam Beal saw what he was doing, saw the quarterback eyeballing the wheel route. He peels off of the drag and gets underneath that wheel route and makes the quarterback turn it down and have to tuck it and run. I thought it was a gorgeous play by Sam Beal. And it's that kind of awareness that's going to allow this guy to excel potentially at the next level. Look, locate, and contest. You know I'm huge on being an LLCer. This guy looks, he locates, and he contests the football. I love it. Want more of it. Watch this guy a number of times down the football field, get in the hip pocket, understand where the receiver was, rail him, feel him, know where he is, and then look back for the football, locate it, and made plays on the football. Watched him do it against USC, knock away early in that ball game. Watched him do it again in that same USC game. This time being able to pop it up to himself and ultimately make a very acrobatic pick on the sidelines, getting his feet in bounds before corralling the football gorgeous play. You can't make plays like that if you don't locate the football. Ran the route for the receiver versus Eastern Michigan on his pick, where he simply just ran the route, got in the hip pocket of the receiver, and then turned, located, and he was the intended receiver for all intents and purposes as he went and tracked that football down over the shoulder catch. So this guy looks back for the football. It is imperative. If you're going to make plays at the next level, you got to be a LLCer, and Sam Beal is exactly that. Ball skills, 2 career interceptions, so not a ton of production, but you can see that his ability to make plays on the football, it translates to a guy that will be able to make plays at the next level. Watching him in those games, I saw a guy that had the ability to go get the football and make some plays. I saw him drop one against Central Michigan that he should have caught, but it was a wet, nasty, rainy day, so I cut him a break on that one, but saw him make a play against Sam Darnold and USC, saw him make a play in the Eastern Michigan game. I know this guy has the ability to go and get the football, so I think his ball skills are just fine moving on to the next level. You look at his man coverage ability. I think this is what teams probably love about Sam Beal the most, is his ability in man-to-man press situations to just come up and delete the airspace and get in the face of a receiver and lock them down. They had a situation over there at Western Michigan where they liked both of their corners out wide, more so Beal than Darius Phillips, but nonetheless, they loved what they had at the cornerback position, and they really trust Beal on one side of the football to just take away that side of the field, eat up a receiver one-on-one, and he had no problems doing it. And the thing I love the most is he had no problems coming up and pressing. I love guys. Too often in college football, you see often soft, you see cover 3 with guys 7 yards off the ball and giving up easy completions underneath. Not the case with Sam Beal. Most of the time, I'd say about a good 65 to 70% of the time, this guy's in press man-to-man. He may not actually lay hands on the receiver, maybe of that 70% of the time, 65, 70%. He may not lay hands on the receiver about 20% of that time, but for the most part, he's putting hands. And if you want to watch him be physical with some receivers and jack them up, go watch that Eastern Michigan game, as I've referenced multiple times. He lays hands on those receivers, disrupts their route before they can even get started. And it's those types of skills that you don't see most corners coming into the league with, being able to really be fluid at the line of scrimmage. It's rare to see guys be that physical, that aggressive, and then still have the ability. We know about guys like Carlton Davis coming into this draft class that was drafted by Tampa Bay, that we know he can press, but he doesn't have the long distance speed to be able to make up if he has a misstep at the line of scrimmage or a guy beats his press. He's toast at the line of scrimmage if there's no safety help. It's not the case with Sam Beal. If he doesn't get off a clean press, or he gives a clean release off press coverage, but he doesn't put his hands in his press and bail, and the guy gets a clean release and he gets up the field and gets a step on Sam Beal, he can still get back in the play because he's got the long distance speed and he has the length to overcome some missteps early on in the play. So those are all things you love with him in man coverage, not to mention he's looking for the football, which I absolutely love. You go to his zone coverage, I think he's really good in zone as well. I like him more in man than I do zone, but even in zone coverage, even when he's coming up, it looks the same. He'll bail at the snap and he'll give ground. I still like him because he's able to stick his foot in the ground and drive on shallow routes, slants, things of that nature, come up. I saw him knock away a couple passes where he's in zone and some cover 3 looks where he's in press and bail, and he bails, and then that receiver runs a slant. He jumps in on that slant and knocks it away. He's good. He identifies what's happening, and he's really, really aggressive. In certain situations, obviously, you can be over-aggressive, and teams can use that against you, but Sam Beal is a guy that I think teams are really drooling over because of the length, the athleticism, and his ability to play both man and press just as well as one another. So you go from all those positives and things that teams really like about Sam Beal and why this guy is going to be drafted in this year's supplemental draft to one of the things that teams probably don't like with him, but it's something that you can get around. Let's get to his con quickly. So I looked at Sam Beal and I watched him from a tackling standpoint, and that's the one thing that really drove me nuts with this guy. He's not a physical, and at a $190, I probably should have expected this, but I've seen guys weigh less come up and do more. So I was hoping that this guy would be the complete package in terms of a guy that'll come up and hit you in your mouth just as well as knock a pass away from you 30 yards down the field. Not quite the case with him. The first 2 tapes that I put on, I watched him against Northern Illinois and Central Michigan. And in the Central Michigan game, I watched him miss 2 tackles. In the following game against Northern Illinois, I watched him miss 4 tackles. It was one of the worst displays of tackling I've seen, maybe since Kevin King last season, watching him make some poor attempts at tackles. But nonetheless, I watched those 2 games and I said, this guy doesn't want any part of tackling. This guy can't tackle. He's throwing shoulders around. He's not looking to wrap up. He doesn't want to be physical. He's playing pity-pat with the receiver on the outside, allowing extra yardage to be gained because he's not getting off of guys that are just stock blocking him. But then I watched him against Eastern Michigan, and he was quite the opposite. He was physical. He was getting off of blocks. He was tackling guys. There was a screen thrown to his side, and I'm saying, oh, shit, this one might go the distance because I know Sam Beal isn't going to stop this play. And they had a blocker out in front. The receiver was in front of Sam Beal. He defeats the block of the receiver. The tackle isn't able to get over there, or the guard isn't able to get over there in time, and Sam Beal is able to corral the running back. Running back probably didn't use his blocks as well as he could have, but the fact that Sam Beal did all of that and stopped the play that looked like it had 35, 40, maybe even 50 yards written all over it to stop it for a gain of about 16. Wow, that was surprising. Had a tackle for a loss versus the quarterback. Had another nice tackle out in space. I was impressed with him tackling in that game. So I know he's capable. I just don't think you're going to get that from him on most occasions. But nonetheless, that's probably the biggest weakness. That and the weight. If you want to talk about the weight, as we talked about earlier, you can complain about the $190. He's going to put on more weight, and I don't think it's going to affect him one iota at the next level. So I'm not going to harp on that. The biggest con that I see is his inability to tackle on a consistent basis. If you want to pick that apart, go right ahead. You got a right to do that with him. But everything else looks really clean with Sam Beal. This guy's going to be a supplemental draft pick. The question is, Hugh, who is it going to be? Is it going to be Cleveland? Is it going to be Kansas City? Who's going to be the team that's going to pull the trigger on a guy like Sam Beal? Someone's got a bunch of assets like a Cleveland, and I think a team like the Browns is going to come calling during tomorrow's supplemental draft for a guy like Western Michigan cornerback Sam Beal. That's his draft prospects one-on-one breakdown. I've got plenty more of the draft wrap-up series coming your way, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. I'm your man, Louie T. I'll see you guys next time. Whoever gets Sam Beal, you're getting yourself one hell of a football player. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.